Welcome to the More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm not Kevin Kelton. I can't play around and keep up that voice for too long. I'm Joe Syar, aka Producer Joe from the Working Fans podcast. And I know Kevin said we were going to wait till late August to get another episode in, but I said, nah, it's still hot in this room. I got to be sweating it out. And today I am joined by Greg Matusak. Greg, how are you doing?
Good. I thought you were Kevin there with that impersonation. You're like the Rich Little of podcasts. It's almost scary, but I'm glad to be doing this podcast full of good things happening.
Also joining us today is one of my co-hosts on the Working Fans podcast, AJ Strangebrew. AJ, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm doing great. First of all, this is one of my favorite podcasts to listen to because you debate politics, you debate things that are going on in the world, but you do it the way debates are meant to be. They're fun, they're full of love, and you just talk about the topics. There's no hate involved, so it's great to be here.
Now, AJ, for those unfamiliar with you, tell us a little about yourself, because I have a feeling we are going to get a little debate tonight, maybe more so than usual.
So I'm a little more conservative than the people that are normally on here, although the funny thing is I'm actually an independent moderate. I don't consider myself a Republican or a Democrat. I think both parties have a tendency of being full of crap. Maybe I'm a little hypersensitive to the two of them, but I love the fact that once again, we're going to be able to talk about ideas and meet somewhere in the middle, because I think that's what we're missing in this country is the ability to meet in the middle. If we can actually focus on that, maybe we can start to get somewhere. But I'm a former professional wrestler. I have done stand-up, and I just have a love for people. So let's get this done.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, AJ. There really is not enough bipartisanship. I mean, you are 100% right. And also probably true, both sides are probably full of crap.
So here's a funny little story. I was assistant manager for a place called Maury's. Maury's is part of Yale. They actually, all the people from Yale come in. It's a private club. They come in, they drink, they do all kinds of stuff together. And you'll hear all these people on the news, all these politicians, and they'll talk about, oh, I'm for this, I can't stand so-and-so, I hate this idea. And guess what? When they all came to Maury's, they were all drinking and celebrating together, no matter what party they were part of, no matter what. At the end of the day, they were all just a bunch of fraternity brothers hanging out and spending time together.
Well, I'm old enough to remember. So I did work in politics for a little while. I was community, I don't want to say activist or anything like that, but I did work on many campaigns and things like that. But there was a time 25 years ago where you knew the other people on the campaigns and you were friends with them. These were people in the community and you could call them, and maybe not on a presidential race, but even still, but in the local races and the state races, you knew them and you were friendly with them. You knew their families on a good way. And it wasn't uncommon. I've had many beers or drinks or diet sodas, whatever, with people from campaigns either that I won or lost against. And it was fine. It got a little dark after about 2006, 2007, 2008. And that's when we stopped calling each other and it got a little less friendly. Now you're right, there's really too much of a divide.
And now it's become to a point where it's such a diatribe of hatred that it's become hard for everybody to work together and to really accomplish what we need to help everybody. It's just gotten way too dark.
Yeah.
And speaking of dark, have you guys seen this Dark Brandon meme that's going around?
It's one of my favorite things on the internet. Now, I love when people take something that's used against them and they can turn it around. In fact, the White House press secretary, one of the White House press secretaries, just tweeted it out. And do you mind if I explain it to our listeners?
Oh, 100% for anybody that hasn't seen it. Greg, let them know what it's about.
So it's an illustration of Biden and his eyes are red and it's dark. And there's all these memes pretty much explaining the fact that since he's gotten COVID, his agenda and his administration has really been getting this shit done. And this has been probably one of his most productive 2 weeks. And, it's not like he's just, they were like, oh, great, he's out of the office. Now we're going, it's sort of like things are moving now. So he's come back stronger and better. And it's really amazing.
See, And I got to tell you, whether you like President Biden or whether you don't, to me, he's kind of taken everything with a grain of salt. Even when they did this, Brandon, when they did all this stuff, he's had a sense of humor about things, and he's kind of taken it to not personally, which is an awesome thing to see, because let's face it, we're going to try to not to mention somebody's name this week, but somebody in the past has taken things a little too personal at times, and it got ugly because of it. So it's refreshing to see a president who doesn't take themselves serious to a point where you're like, oh Christ, we might have to go to war.
Yeah. It's nice that it's sort of like, oh, you just said something nasty about me? I think I can live with that because it's not that big of a deal. It kind of makes politics, I don't encourage people to say bad things about other people at all. But it's also nice when they don't get super upset or crazy about it. And they're like, all right, and we're moving on. Because you're going to always have people saying bad things. And it's a great lesson. I try to tell my kids, like, people are going to say bad things. It shouldn't affect your work. Let's move on. So this Dark Brandon thing has been super funny. I shouldn't say super funny. It's been amusing. It's been great. But I'm hoping in a week or two it will die down.
I like the fact that it was created in China.
Yeah, the actual illustration was created in China. And that's something else we're now taking and turning around. So once again, it makes the whole political spirit a little bit more fun. We're not looking at each other's spelling. We're not like, oh, he misspoke or he stammers or, like, I hate this guy because he wears a bow tie, or it's just like, all right. And we're now also cheering on that right now something's being successful. This period, things are getting done. We've had, and yeah, before the naysayers are like, but not everything is getting done. There's some things, and that's kind of awesome.
Focus on the things we are getting done. For example, a man who himself promoted fake news, Alex Jones, finally facing some consequences, and to the tune of, was it 45 million?
The defamation suit was 45, and then there was another one that was for another 4.
So it's a total of 49.
Yeah.
And he's already appealing it, saying that he believes he should pay at most, I think it was $1,500 or some low amount, saying that the way he understood it, it was like $750,000 for each person.
Yeah, he's just going to end up claiming that a conspiracy and that he wasn't really ordered to pay it. And he wasn't even in the core. This guy's such a complete jackass. And I'm sorry, allegedly a complete jackass. We live in Connecticut, me and producer Joe, and I'm 20 minutes from it. It's just absolutely ridiculous that anybody could actually try to say that this was a conspiracy, never really happened, that these families are just full of crap. The fact that this guy is that irresponsible, he's lucky he's only paying $49 million.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. I love a good conspiracy theory. My favorite one recently is about aliens at Wright Pat Air Force Base. I don't know if that will actually make it on the podcast before the government retracts it, but it's awesome. And if you get a chance, there's all sorts of great conspiracy theories that don't involve complete fabrications of reality and dead children. And, I mean, and there's got to be a line. So seeing this guy and seeing justice like this, I mean, true justice would be like a time machine and turning off his microphone, but that's not going to happen. But making sure that he doesn't do this again, or making sure that other people, in fact, since this has happened, the Twitterverse has been eerily silent from other far-right conspiracy theorists. And they've kind of stopped talking so much about this for fear that they too may lose, everything.
One of the big problems that we have is when people cross the line and try to use freedom of the press. People will come out and try to go, hey, I can say this because you know what? I have a blog, I have this, I have these credentials, so I can say this, it's fine. Freedom of the press does not allow you to just come out and make false statements. That is not what freedom of the press is meant to do. It's supposed to be information that you share with everybody that is accurate, that you have done your homework on, that you make sure is the most accurate to your understanding. This man is coming out and falsely saying stuff that you can do 2 seconds of background check on and see how accurate the opposite end of what he's saying is. And it's just atrocious abuse of the First Amendment.
Did you see any of the highlights from this trial?
I did. And the guy comes across as even more of an ass.
But the best part was when he's like, look, I don't really know this whole text thing. I don't understand. I've never texted this. And the opposing lawyer says, we have your texts. You're lying. Your lawyer sent us your text by accident. And he's like, well, I don't. I mean, he was caught on stand lying several times. The judge was getting really frustrated, and I'm hoping there will be a perjury charge eventually.
They should hit him for perjury for his testimony alone. So not only should he now be paying the $49 million to the family, he should be paying perjury and getting criminal charges against him.
I agree. But that was a great way to start the week, hearing something like that. Some good news for people. It really was.
And then another success is the economy looks like it's coming back around. We've got the Inflation Reduction Act going through. Gas prices are coming down.
Yeah.
With this heat, it's about time. We need something to go our way.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know where you guys are, but I just filled up my tank for under $4. I think it was $3.74 the other day. Yeah, it was $3.74. And I know at the height I was paying $5.10. And when I say the height, I literally mean 2.5 weeks ago. So it is amazing at how fast this is going down.
It's very nice not to have to go to Costco just to get gas. Don't get me wrong, my wife loves going to Costco. It's always a fun trip. But first of all, now I'm spending $400 shopping at Costco just so that I can save 30 cents a gallon to get gas. It's nice to see the gas prices going the opposite way. And we're at about $3.97 near my house. I know Joe lives in a ritzier neighborhood, so he's probably still around $6, but that's fine.
Yeah. We expect Joe lives pretty fancy.
I think we're a hair above $4. I haven't needed to get gas in the last couple of days, so I honestly haven't looked. But
he drives a Hummer, so he fills it up once a day. It's fine.
Something I did try and look up is this Inflation Reduction Act. Greg, can you give me the lowdown on this? Because I kind of half understand it.
Okay, so the Inflation Reduction Act, which just passed today, actually, they worked all weekend, and it was pretty much held up by Manchin and Sinema, and it was voted on 50-50 party lines. So, of course, there was a tiebreaker, and of course, the vice president does their one job that is actually useful. They get to settle the tie. And it's pretty much, you can either look at this as like, this is awesome, or you can say, this is a giant disappointment. So we're going to go glass half full first. Oh, wait, let me take that back. We're going to go glass half empty. So it is a reduction of the bill that the Democrats originally put out. Okay, they originally wanted a lot more for everything that I'm about to say, and they did not get it. Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, and a couple other people saying like, nope, that's too much. There was a aspect, and there's also, it covers healthcare, it covers climate, and it covers taxes. Those are the three big ones. And they were like, nope. But President Joe Biden said, this is the best bill that we could get passed at this time. And he's absolutely right. Government should be about compromise. Someone just recently told me that. I'm trying to remember who it was, in cooperation. Oh, it was AJ. And I think this is a bill based on compromise. So, yeah, we can get into the specifics as far as like the IRS aspects. The big one is that if you own a corporation, and this, I'm looking at you two, that makes more than $1 billion, either one, raise your hand. Okay, Joe, you will now have to pay a minimum 15% taxes.
Wow, that's a nice little chunk there.
They've talked about this bill will at the very least add $300 billion to our deficit right there alone. And they're going to do it. Now, you will probably see a lot of companies go in and say, look, we made $999 million this year. We didn't quite make it, but I'd be surprised. So where a lot of companies do not pay any taxes over $1 billion, this 15% is going to be huge. Additionally, for like the healthcare, certain medications can be negotiated under Medicaid. Yeah, and that's just super huge. What was the other one?
40% carbon is going to be eliminated by 2030 with what they're going to be able to do with this act. So that's kind of a cool thing also.
Right. Tax incentives for electric cars. If you want to put alternative energy sources for your house, there will be emission caps. And initially, they wanted it to make it so that that date would be moved up and there would be actually about 60%. But they felt like they could do this much and hopefully private industry would catch up and say like, yeah, this is working. This is where it is going. There's going to be huge tax rebates for like electric cars. You know, yeah. I know my next car will be electric, but I'm looking forward to a tax rebate on that.
So, Greg, I agree with you. I think that this is the best bill possible that they could have agreed on and compromised on. There are some things that are missing from it that I do agree with Bernie Sanders about, that we would have been better off if we did have, because he did want to add the child tax credit to it, and he did want to make it so that Medicare drug costs would never be higher than what the Veteran Affairs pays for it. So those would have been cool things to adapt to it. The other thing that would have been cool that got bumped off of it in order to pass through was insulin. I am not someone who needs insulin, but there are so many people, especially in lower income areas, where, let's face it, diabetes is so serious and they're not able to get some of the insulin and some of the products that they need because of the cost of insulin and because of where it's at. So I would have loved to have seen those things attached, but I do agree with you because I don't think we would have ever gotten it through if we didn't bend a little bit and take those off, unfortunately.
Right. And like you said, the original thing that the Democrats wanted was that there would be a cap on insulin for $35. Now, insulin can be really expensive. I have close family that's diabetic. It runs in my family. I was just diagnosed as pre-diabetic. So this is something I know everyone is shocked, and especially if you know me and my diet. But these are things that, I actually take care of. $35 would be an amazing feat. Okay, and insulin can be really, really expensive, especially if you don't have health insurance, especially if you're not on some sort of program either. And this is another instance, like when you say cooperation, we can't blame the GOP on this. We can't blame the Republicans on this. This was within our own party.
Yeah.
And literally, we can really blame it on like one or two people, okay? And they're not orange. They don't live in Florida. This is probably Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. Those were the two holdouts on these things. And you're right, Bernie Sanders made some really good points on a lot of things. And
I don't always agree with Bernie. Bernie can be a little extreme for me. However, when it comes to children and taking care of our elderly, I am a firm believer in making sure that gets done.
Oh, yeah. Children should be children and elderly, without a doubt. I don't think anyone disagrees with you on that, but no one does anything.
Nobody disagrees with us out loud about that.
And it's good to see we got some cooperation here, because lately, especially with how hard we were all hit with this Roe versus Wade decision, it does show that if we get it together and certain things politically won't pass us by. Another thing that we got done, despite Roe versus Wade, how it is federally, Kansas voted against an abortion ban, which was huge.
Well, the one thing that does give me hope is the fact that it is still in the hands of states. So states are able to actually step up and do the right thing and can still enforce a version of Roe versus Wade, because it is still technically their right to say, no, you can go and get this help. You can go and be able to actually take care of your body. So this is an opportunity for states to do the right thing. And to see Kansas, which I don't know about you, but I wasn't exactly sitting here going, I bet you Kansas is going to do the right thing. And that's my fault. I shouldn't have judged them ahead of time, but I wasn't sure they were going to.
Yeah, right. With the new states, and we're going to probably see a division among red states versus blue states. Red states are going to be much more restrictive, if not complete bans on abortion, versus blue states, which are going to be, I don't think there is a state now that, is like free abortions, everybody, anytime, 24/7. I mean, and no one wants that. No one wants, and the myth of the third trimester abortion, like someone's like in their third trimester and is like, I think I just don't want this baby at this point. I mean, that's kind of a myth. Usually the percentages show that third trimester abortions are because of health or safety reasons, and they're terrible. They're the worst things in the world for parents to go through.
Well, I think one of the problems is that you get these Christian fundamental groups that try to make it, and I'm not knocking, don't write me, I'm not knocking people's religion. You have a right to your beliefs, but you don't have to make people that disagree with you look evil. They have a tendency of trying to make it look like there's just this girl who's using abortion as birth control. Hey, I was out this month and I got pregnant again. I'm going to go get an abortion. That is not what 99.9% of pro-choice people actually believe in. It's the fact is it's a woman's body. You don't want to endanger a woman. You don't want to have a woman bring in a child in that they're not prepared for. And you don't want young kids having to go out of state to frickin' have an abortion because they were raped.
I assume you're talking about my state, Ohio. But
okay. Sorry.
No. I deserve it. The thing that we're going to talk about hopefulness this is, you're right, Kansas is a traditional red state. There's a great book, and I can't remember the author's name, called What's the Matter with Kansas? And it discusses the fact that Kansas is primarily working class people. There are people who, everything should be, they should lean Democrat, right? And yet most of them identify Republican or populist, which leans right also. And it has a lot to do with how missteps in the Democratic Party and, the fact that in Kansas, they've thought for years that Wall Street is owned by Democrats and big business is a Democrat thing, which is okay, sure. For those of us who grew up in I didn't grow up in a Democratic family. For those of you who did grow up, we're working class families. So to see something like this, where people banded together and said, okay, let's use some common sense here. And yes, I have no problem saying this. This movement in Kansas was largely women-led and driven. And I think we are going to see this at the poll numbers. And this is the big, big takeaway from this. Midterms are coming, okay? And they're a slaughter for the incumbent president's party, first-term president party. This may not happen. If the first two things we talk about, Republicans are running on the economy and inflation, which may be easing up, it may not be that bad, and abortion, which may not swing the way they really read the papers. So in that case, this could turn out a lot differently than they thought.
Yeah, 100%. And the timing is perfect. I mean, for this to be swinging in the right direction in August going into September, Greg, like yourself, I enjoy obscure books. And What's the Matter with Kansas is actually, if you guys want to check it out, you can get it in a lot of different places. It's by Thomas Frank.
Thank you.
It is a hell of a book. I, like yourself, enjoy political books, and I enjoy books that look kind of like the psychology behind different places.
Yeah.
What has made people vote the way they do. My family is a very large Democrat family, and the reason why is because my grandfather came down from Quebec and worked in the wire mills, so they were very union, very strong, and that's why my family is the Democrat background that they are, is because they're very heavy in the unions. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think that we are in a place right now where things are not going the way that people who put things in place expect them to. The abortion is definitely not going the way that the GOP thought it was going to go, or whatever they were planning with the Supreme Court and what's going on. Talk about conspiracy theories, but that's a whole nother thing.
Wait, I'm going to interrupt you. So my favorite conspiracy theory with the Supreme Court, and this one I'll give to the right, I love this one, is with Kavanaugh. And this is a side one. Like, who paid off all Kavanaugh's debts? He had $92,000 country club bill, a $1.2 million mortgage. Who paid all this off right before which, if you do any research, and I love the thought that perhaps he's indebted to some big business or whatnot, but to be honest, it was probably his dad. His dad is super rich, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and he probably said, hey dad, could you pay off my country club fee? And his dad was like, oh yeah, sure. Oh, you're going to be a Supreme Court judge? Sure.
Dad, I got this little thing coming up. There's a chance I might be on the Supreme Court. Do you think you could take care of my country club fees for me?
Yeah, my caddy fees and whatnot. I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying that Kavanaugh's a dick. What's the nice way of saying it?
Oh, I got it. Kavanaugh's a dick.
Kavanaugh's a dick. I don't think he's not a dick. How's that? That's my double negative of the day.
I'm sorry. We should put this in there. Allegedly.
Allegedly, he's a dick.
On the flip side of the whole Kansas thing, Indiana came out as being super restrictive about abortion, and a company that's big in Indiana, Eli Lilly, is looking to expand outside of the state now just because of that. And these are kind of two decisions that give two looks at it, that it could go one of two ways if these very restrictive bans come down.
I don't think states like Indiana should actually be able to vote against abortion if they can't spell it.
Well, the thing about the Indiana one was it never went to a vote. It was a legislative vote. Yeah. It was never, and when things like that in a highly red state like Indiana, that's going to happen. There's a good chance that on all these states, it will come to a vote by the people. In Michigan, it's actually going on a vote that abortion will be in its constitution, that you are free to have an abortion. Okay, they're trying to get in, but it has to go to a vote to the people. That will be coming up in November. You will see large turnouts just for that. And I think this is where the Republican Party is like, look, we are going to go all or nothing. And as far as the business aspect, that's a great point, Joe. Who remembers the transgender bathroom bills of North Carolina. And everybody was like, hey, look, we're not building here. We don't want to be seen here. We're not holding our conventions here. The NCAA basketball tournament, I think, pulled out, which, I mean, when college sports is like, hey, we are support of the transgender community, I'm like, yes, these are jocks, not that I'm disparaging jocks, but this was not like this year. This was like 10 years ago.
When the NCAA is saying you're doing something that's fucked up, you're doing something fucked up.
Yeah, it might as well be NFL football.
That's a whole nother basket.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Oh my God. How dare you want to suspend our guy for sexually harassing 24 women? That's horrible.
That's
allegedly. You got to give it up for these companies, though, in Indiana. God bless them. Just step up, do the right thing. Stand by your convictions. If you're going to stand up and you're going to do that, then at least gives us something to believe in. Because these companies could easily just lay over and go, no. We're just going to make the money, keep our mouths shut, and we're fine. So God bless them for stepping up.
Well, additionally, what they're going to find is that there's tons of places to build other states, and other states will gladly. Ron DeSantis wants to get into a pissing match with Disney, which is awesome. And Disney right now is like, well, let's see how this next election cycle goes and whatnot. But we're not going to stop being woke, which I hate that term. It means actually, that's another story. But when it's all said and done, these corporations, they can move, they can change. And yes, Disney World is iconic and it is there, but they have lots of money. And according to the Supreme Court, corporations are people. They have their rights.
Now, I will stand up for these companies over Disney for one reason. Disney didn't take action until until they started getting boycotted at Disney. Disney was perfectly fine to keep their mouth shut and stand in a corner and not do the right thing until people said, whoa, what are you doing? Whereas these companies are stepping up before anybody's saying anything to them. So this... Yeah, to me, this is a lot more brave.
Yeah, you know what? When people get shamed into doing the right thing, like Jon Stewart was recently shaming a large group of senators for not passing the medical bill for toxic pits Iraq war veterans, right?
Yeah.
And Ted Cruz was like, well, this was just this, no. This was a money thing, and he doesn't understand. I've read that bill. He should be shamed. And Mitch McConnell has already said, if the Democrats introduce the bill again, it will pass without any problems. And they will, and it will probably pass in the next week or two.
It's just sad when somebody has to be shamed into doing the right thing. You talked about woke before. To me, half these jackasses that say that they're woke is because they're shamed. So they go, oh, wait a minute, all of a sudden I'm ashamed. So I've got to change my behavior and I'm woke.
Well, and I just had someone was recently asking me what woke means. And I said, well, can you give me an example of woke behavior? And they were using pronouns. And I said, well, that sounds like being polite or being like a decent human being. Like if someone said, hi, I would like you to refer to me as, and then you go, oh, okay, sure. I can do that.
To me, pointing out that you're woke is like pointing out that you gave to a charity.
Right.
If I have to point it out, I'm not actually woke.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
It's been such a positive week, and it took us, 21 years, but we finally got one of the key plotters of 9/11, Ayman al-zawahri.
Well done, you. Look at your pronunciation. Well done, you.
See, I can pronounce it, but now I haven't read up anything about it. So once again, can you tell me a little about this?
Ayman's not his actual first name. It's what he said as the bomb was dropping on his head.
I'm okay with terrorist dying jokes. Usually like, punch a Nazi, kill a terrorist. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, when you do horrible things like that, I got no problem with it.
Yeah, I really don't. So he was like the number 2 person involved with the 9/11 attacks. He was a major plotter. He was still a key figure in the terrorist organizations that are involved. So this was a huge thing. A lot of people think that since we're no longer in Afghanistan, that this is over. Like, oh, okay, war on terror. So thank you. Mission accomplished. Let's fly onto that battleship, get a cool leather jacket, hang the banner, and we're done. But it's not. It's still an ongoing thing. We face threats both domestic and overseas, and we have great people who are watching out. And this administration, and yes, I never feel comfortable when the president comes out and talks about it. I didn't feel comfortable when Biden, says, by the way, it feels a little, what's the word? I don't want to say bloodthirsty, but it feels a little...
exploitive?
Yeah, maybe. And the only one, of course, was when Obama came out to talk about...
Osama bin Laden?
Yeah,
okay, that was a big one, and I think I can understand that one. But when both Trump and Biden and George W., I never felt comfortable. I always just wanted a general to come out and say it. It's awkward to hear it from me.
Exactly. First of all, the generals and the troops that are on the ground are the ones that are getting it done. So I'd rather hear about them actually saying, hey, we got this son of a bitch. I don't need some guy in a suit telling me, hey, I got him.
Please tell us more. Regale us with your screen watching ability.
Yeah, to me, that's like seeing somebody running for president and all of a sudden they're showing pictures of themselves in Vietnam and they're coming out of the bush in their dress whites. There's just certain things that don't sit well with me.
Yeah, I agree. But the important thing is that it reminds us that there are still things going on, and America's still getting it done. America's still kicking ass. It's tough sometimes being a liberal because everyone just assumes, like, I hate war. I do hate war, and that's true. But that I don't believe in the military, or that I don't support the troops. I have very, very close family in the military, and I support them 110% without a doubt, and in almost everything that they do.
I think the misconception is and where people get confused, is that you don't have to necessarily believe in unsanctioned wars. You don't have to believe in actions that are for oil only, actions that are only to make our pockets fatter. There's a difference between having a military, defending yourself, and doing what's right in circumstances, and going out there just to actually increase your pockets.
Yeah, I agree. Well said.
Well, it took us 30 minutes to let Kevin down, but we brought up his name even when we thought we couldn't.
Oh my gosh, I did it! Shit.
Now, has there been any other news that you want to cover this week before we get into everybody's favorite part of the show, what we've been watching lately?
Wait a minute. We've got to talk about one thing. There's this jerk out of Missouri. His name is Senator Josh Hawley. He voted against Sweden and Finland to be ratified into NATO. He's the one person who actually just completely flat out voted against it. Now, I don't know if he's that same Jack who is on the voters for the Baseball Hall of Fame, that no matter how good your stats are, I can't vote you in the first try. But this schmuck from Missouri voted against Sweden and Finland. What has Sweden and Finland done to you that they don't belong in NATO?
Right. Well, Sweden and Finland would be a huge geopolitical ally. They literally border Russia. And Vladimir Putin has said that if they do get NATO protection, he will be extremely pissed. And who knows what could happen? He may invade another country, defenseless country. But that's just the point. As long as we have these NATO and we're all involved together, he's not going to do these things. And they saw themselves as being next. So, yeah. And Josh Hawley, for those of you who don't know Senator Josh Hawley, he's the one in the last January 6th commission session. They showed the video of him running out repeatedly, like, oh, and there you are, and now you're sprinting out. That's Josh Hawley. Yeah. He is just a certifiable POS. There's a good chance he'll probably run for president.
So I look at Sweden and Finland join NATO. Remember that bully in school? And if everybody just stood up against the bully would have backed down. Josh Hawley, we need to have everybody stand together. If you're watching this, Josh, or Mr. Representative, whatever you go by, if you're watching this, if we all stand together, Putin backs down. If we're separated, then he moves forward. See World War II. Maybe you'll see a similar thing going on.
Well, I mean, see North Korea.
Exactly.
His biggest fear right now would be that his country becomes North Korea, where nothing gets in. Because as of now, he controls a lot of the media, much like North Korea. He controls a lot of the messaging. And the people are like, that Putin guy, he rides horses shirtless. He wrestles tigers. He's all right in my book. But the moment that they stop getting, what I always call garbage day and Starbucks. Okay. So everything in America could really fall apart in a lot of places. But if your garbage isn't picked up and you can't get your Starbucks, everyone freaks out. Like, this is going to stop immediately. Well, I'm sure there's something similar. And the people will rise up, and he does not have the numbers to stop that. His oligarchies do not. So, yeah, the more people who kind of keep him in line, and I, for one, would love to have great economic relations with Russia. They have great resources. We could do great stuff if they would stop being such jerks.
Dude, I listened to the Scorpions in the 80s. I wanted to go down to Gorky Park. I'm with ya.
What a great album. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Hey, I remember when the wall came down in Berlin. We want Russia there. We want to sell our Levi's. We want to be brothers and sisters with you. Just stop being assholes.
We've covered a lot of heavy subjects this week, but I always enjoy talking about what we've been watching entertainment-wise. And as for myself, Vince McMahon is out of WWE, so I'm back to watching WWE, and I have to actually kind of marathon Westworld tonight. Greg, what have you been keeping up with lately?
It's the busy season for me and my work right now, so I haven't watched that much TV. I introduced my children to the Venture Brothers, which I've seen many, many times. It was a show on Cartoon Network. It's for some people, it's like, oh yeah, Venture Brothers. Some people, it's obscure. HBO just picked it up a couple months ago, and it's kind of like, whatever happened to Johnny Quest? If Johnny Quest grew up and he had PTSD from all the strange times that he got kidnapped as a child, or, it's really funny. It's super dark. And yes, it's a cartoon. And yes, I'm showing it to my children. I shouldn't say that out loud.
It's okay. His children are 30.
Yeah. They come over and watch it. Oh, Sandman started on Friday. I do only watch comic books and cartoons. What's wrong with me? It's based on the Neil Gaiman comic book of the same name. Neil Gaiman wrote the book American Gods, Good Omens. He's a fabulous writer, but he wrote a story called Sandman, which deals with conceptualizations such as dreams, death, whatnot, and then they beat people up. I don't know.
That sounds amazing, actually.
It really is. It's on Netflix. Definitely check it out. But like I said, if you liked Good Omens, which was on Amazon about 2 years ago with David Tennant, then you would like this. Otherwise, you're like, no, that's not my bag.
So when I'm not listening to the More Perfect Union or Working Fans podcast, I actually, like Joe, I have to watch a tremendous amount of wrestling because we commentate on it. So you don't want to not be informed when you're talking about it. But for my own personal pleasure, and this is going to make me sound like I'm 100 years old, I just started rewatching the Jack Benny program from the early 1950s on YouTube. I am one of those people who loves classic comedy, and I love to study the timing of comedians. I love to see how they interact with people, and I dissect it. And Jack Benny, to me, is one of those people who his timing was just so impeccable, and what he could do with his facial features or just a movement of his arms to be able to and get the crowd to go nuts was absolutely phenomenal. Him, Milton Berle, I love watching those old programs. I just love comedy like that.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I've done those Jack Benny's, but I used to do the radio programs.
Oh, I love the radio programs.
The radio programs are really funny, and they lead a lot more to your imagination. I have not listened or watched any of the Jack Benny in, it's got to be at least 15, 20 years, but I've seen a lot of them, and I definitely watched them in my youth, 15, 20 years ago. A lot of stuff while we're growing up seemed awesome, but does it still hold up? Like as we all know, I just rewatched some Friends because Friends was super popular, but it's really not as funny anymore. And
especially now at our age, we're looking at it and going, wait a minute, how big is that apartment? They're in New York? Wait, what are they paying?
and we sit there and we say, wait, your problem is that you just have too many dates, and you've got this, and these are your problems. This is what you're complaining about. You have 2 dates to the prom. I mean, I'm like,
yeah, the ugliest people on the show are Matthew Perry and whoever played Phoebe. That is incredibly, I feel horrible for them.
Right. It doesn't really hold up as well. But does the Jack Benny show hold up?
See, to me, it holds up, and it's fun to see how ahead of the time it was and how creative they got with some of their innuendos, stuff of that nature. There are some things that don't hold up because they have the commercials in there, and every commercial is Lucky Stripes. However, the comedy itself, especially for people who enjoy comedy like we do, it's great to see how they use the timing, and it holds up for us. Now, will it hold up for somebody who is Joe Schmo off the street and isn't interested in that? Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, you were saying you were watching a lot of wrestling because it's something you have to do. Do you get to the point where you're like, I have no desire to watch this anymore because I have to watch it? And although it's something you enjoy, you don't want to anymore.
So I think Joe will agree with me on this one. For the last 10 to 15 years, watching the WWE became a chore. I was like, oh, crap, I've got to see what happened on Monday night. I got to see what happened on Friday night. I have to see what happened so that I can talk about it. Now that Vince McMahon is gone, and it's one of the things that I think Joe was talking about, we actually have hope. Kind of like, to bring it back around to what we've been talking about with what's going on right now with this bill being passed, when you have that glimmer of hope, when you see the gas prices come down, when you see the storylines are fresh again, when you see people have a chance, when you as an individual in America feel like you have a chance, that is when the magic happens. And that's when wrestling becomes fun again.
God, that was such a rousing speech. And I'm going to come with the honesty. Yes, I get tired of it. I enjoy it. But then there comes a point where it's like, I need to see something else. Yeah, I need to watch different things. That's why I like things like Westworld. That's why I like stand-up specials on either YouTube or Netflix. Something to cleanse the palate a little bit.
There is a more modern one that I just started watching, and I watched the first season, and now I'm into the second one, Murder in the Building. I do enjoy
Only
that.
Murders in the Building, right?
Yes,
It's,
with Steve Martin.
Short.
Truth be known, I've always been a Steve Martin fan. I'm not necessarily the biggest Martin Short fan, and I like their chemistry together. They even make Selena Gomez seem funny.
Oh, I think she's funny naturally.
That was a little joke for my daughter. My daughter is 23 and she adores Selena Gomez. So that was a little stab at her for when she listens to this.
Selena Gomez had a cooking show, like right as COVID started. Did anyone see this?
No.
No, I mean, and it was, so what was awesome about the show, I think it's still available on one of the streaming platforms. It was her in this giant kitchen, right? And it was her kitchen. I mean, and this thing was like amazing. Her personal assistant was running the cameras, and they had set up so you had a top view camera, and then they would Skype or Zoom or whatever the technology of the day with a well-known famous chef, right? Or just a famous chef. And then they would teach Selena how to cook a single thing, one thing, right? And like the first one was scrambled eggs. And can you cook scrambled eggs? And I mean, granted, it took like 40 minutes for her to do it. And she's pulling out these beautiful, she decked out the kitchen with like the most high-end expensive things, but it was funny. It was enjoyable. And for someone who enjoys cooking shows, it was not the worst way to spend COVID time. I mean, I grew a beard. I learned how to whistle with my fingers, stuff like that.
With my daughter being 23, and you know, because you have children, some of the things we have to watch when they are little are just absolutely god-awful. And one of the things that was not god-awful was Witches of Waverly Place, which Selena Gomez was on when she was first coming into the business. And that was something I could watch with my daughter because we had a love for Harry Potter. We had a love for all of that stuff. So this was along that pipeline.
I want to thank everyone for listening this week. And if you enjoy what we do here, please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast and on Instagram at MPU Fan Club. Don't forget to share the link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And anywhere that you listen to podcasts, please take a minute to rate and review us and just let people know how much you enjoy this show. If you want to talk politics, join our Facebook group, Open Fire Politics and Entertainment. Greg, with this heat wave continuing, how do you plan on staying cool this week?
Well, one, I'm not going to go outside at all. But two, I'm going to stay inside. I'm going to try to make as many memes as possible. I know Kevin had a scheduling issue. He wasn't sick, but I think I'm going to make a dark Kevin meme. Like he's going to come back now stronger and better and make our podcast even more successful.
And AJ, is there anything you'd like to promote? Wink, wink.
Absolutely. So guys, make sure you check out the Working Fans podcast. We have the Combat Cast that we do every Friday. We go live at noon on Facebook Live, and it's me and my co-host Dave and producer Joe. We talk about all the things that are interesting in wrestling, but we also do what we call the 5-3-1, where we take the top 5 of a subject, we break it down to 3, and then we come up with what's number 1. It was the brainchild of that man over there, and it is absolutely amazing when we do it. Thank you for having me on this program. I really do love listening to the More Perfect Union. It is always a fun show. And Greg, you were as amazing as I thought you would be. It was fun chatting with you. And thank you for having me.
That means so much. Thank you. I'm going to interrupt your thing there. That means a lot. It was great meeting you. And the exact same. I'm so glad we got to meet tonight.
And not to correct you, AJ, but the Combat Cast usually airs on Tuesday or Wednesday. Dave and Chevy talk combat sports, and we'll do our podcast tapings on Friday. Greg, last time time we did a podcast with a member of the More Perfect Union when it was me and AJ, they didn't come back. So hopefully the curse doesn't apply to you here.
I've been known to do last man standing matches on podcasts.
Oh, no.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will see you again.